Hi, my name is Irene Davis, and I am the president of Sandwich of Trustees Beaches. I'd like to welcome you to the first episode in our series about sandwich beach erosion. It's titled Sandwich, It's Not the Same Without the Sand. Before I introduce my first guest, I'd like to give you a little background about the motivation behind this series. I grew up on Town Neck in Sandwich back in the 60s and 70s, and I spent my summers on the beach during the day and waitressing at night. And the beaches were very different back then. The dunes were high, there was a bathhouse, there was a snack bar, we had sandwich beach dances on Saturday night, and Ginger and Sandy gave us swim lessons during the day. Well, I moved away. I did continue to come back to Sandwich through the years, and I always vowed that I'd live on that beach where I learned to swim. My husband and I now own a house there. However, over the years, I've watched our beach just melt into the ocean, and I was really frustrated and wanted to try to do something to make a difference. So I volunteered to serve on the Sandwich Beach Committee for a while, and then decided to form a citizens group that was focused solely on addressing beach erosion and the impact it has on our historic town. We formed the Trustees of Sandwich Beaches, which is a 501c3 organization that's made up of a group of very passionate individuals who have a mission to promote the restoration of our beaches, dunes, and salt marshes and protect them from further erosion in order to preserve the natural beauty of our shoreline, historic town, districts, and boardwalk. Also to promote a balance of public access to the beaches and conservation of their natural habitat, to ensure the long-term stabilization of our beaches so that they can be enjoyed for generations to come. That's our mission statement. For more information about the Trustees of Sandwich Beaches, please go to www.trusteesofsandwichbeaches.org, and you can find information about our work and certainly can help to join our cause. And we're hoping that this series will help to provide the public with information about the state of the beaches and hopefully answer some questions about beach erosion and what can be done about it. Now, my first guest is Paul Schrader, who's known to many of you in town. I came to know Paul through my work on the Sandwich Beach Committee, and he's now also a member of the board of the Trustees of Sandwich Beaches. Paul's lived in Sandwich for over 13 years. He's a community activist and has served on many town and Cape Cod organizations. He recently served on the Sandwich Beach Committee and currently serves on the Charter Review Committee. He recently retired as the executive director of the Consumer Assistance Council, but continues there as director and treasurer. He serves as the director and treasurer of the Massachusetts Consumer Council and is active with the Consumer Federation of America. One of the things that many people do not know about Paul is he also served as 2 terms as the mayor of the city of Friendswood, Texas. Around town, Paul is maybe best known for his advocacy in the issue of beach erosion. He and Randy Hunt produced a video on the topic that has brought this issue to the forefront of the public. The title of this video is Town Neck Beach, Sands of Time. And we're going to show just a few clips of this video, and we'll give you the opportunity to see the video in its entirety after our show. So I'd like to welcome now Paul Schrader, one of the producers of that video. And I want to start out by asking you, Paul, how did you and Randy come to develop this video? How did that come to be?
Well, I think I have to go back just a tiny bit. I'm a native of the South Shore and used to come down to the Cape to enjoy the beaches here, and then moved away for a number of years. And when my wife and I decided to find a place to kind of retire in, or semi-retire in, we selected Sandwich. And on a regular basis, we enjoyed walking around Town Neck Beach, across the boardwalk and out to the tip and back. And back in 2001, when we were doing that one evening, was just a beautiful evening. As we get back to where the stairs are leading from the beach to the boardwalk, there was a man at the top watching his kids slide down the face of the dune. And at the bottom was the mother who was photographing what was going on, maybe even videotaping it. And being a community activist, outspoken, environmentalist kind of person, I was going to speak to them and tell them that not only are you destroying it by moving the sand down, but you're destroying the grasses at the very top that hold the sand in place. But Claire told me, no, it wasn't my place to do that. And so I got in contact with the selectmen, and I also wrote a piece for the local newspaper, just kind of describing this fragile resource and how we as human beings have a responsibility to take care of it. And then over succeeding years, I would continue to go to the selectmen or to the town to try to get them to take an active role in protecting the dunes, making people aware how sensitive the situation is and why they have to be careful where they walk, what they step on, what they slide down, because it wasn't going to be here forever. And over time, I got in contact with Randy and asked him if he, would work to produce a video that we might show that would go further to educate people about this important resource from a number of different perspectives. And Randy agreed and did a marvelous job of putting this together. And it's been on YouTube now for a few years, and I think we're almost up to 3,000 views.
Yeah, I just checked it last night.
Which is pretty significant.
That's great.
And it's been used, in a number of formats to try to educate people, because I think that we as human beings have to be responsible. Even though that stop sign is up there, that doesn't mean somebody's going to stop. Unfortunately, in the perfect world, we wouldn't even need the sign. People would know that they have a responsibility at that intersection to use caution. But since then, I've walked the beach on a regular basis. A couple of weeks back, I did it every single day because the conditions were right for the boardwalk to be flooded over, and I photographed it every day. Again, in an opportunity to try to educate people that we have this fragile resource, and it's important from a number of perspectives. First is, it is a barrier beach. It separates Cape Cod Bay from downtown Sandwich. The railroad tracks, I guess, would be the best buffer there. Secondly, it's a tourist attraction. People come here to use the beach, to watch what goes on and enjoy it. It's an environmental habitat for endangered birds, and that habitat has been shrinking. And presumably, if it goes away completely, those birds are either going to be lost to us, the population reduced, so it's from all of those standpoints, environmental, economic, whatever. It's a very important resource, and it's melting away.
I'd like to go back to your very first experience where you saw those kids sliding down the dunes. I remember as a child, those dunes were huge, and I used to jump off of them. And of course, as a child, you don't know. So in terms of education, it really has to be multi-pronged, doesn't it?
Yes.
We need to get into the schools and educate the children, but we also need to educate the adults so that they can teach their children.
Well, we have to recognize that it's one of those things that is not going to be there forever.
Right.
No matter what we do as human beings, it probably is going to go anyway.
Right.
I mean, when you think that the Cape was formed when the glaciers melted after the Ice Age,
right,
and that, virtually every place that you look along the Cape, not just in Sandwich, the sand is moving. And then if you accept the theory of climate change, and global warming, which I think is secondary to climate change, the ocean is rising. And
sure.
I don't think there's any question about it here.
But you do have to, we all have to admit that this has been happening at an accelerated rate. So I grew up here in the 60s and the 70s, and I can remember the tide, the ebb and flow. I can remember seeing sand go and sand coming back. But it just seems that over the past few years, we're losing at a much higher rate than we're having replenishment. And so I feel that we're at a tipping point. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that. I mean, if we let it just go, it will go. And so we need probably to take some measures to try to mitigate those factors. Do you think that you've seen and watching this over the past 13 years? I mean, I know you've been out there like the storm watcher. You're out there in the middle of the storm videotaping. You've probably done more videoing and capturing of the beach and the changes of the beach. What is your thought about that? Do you think we're at a critical point?
Well, I think we are at a critical point, and there are a number of things that impact the sand and the dunes. Certainly the water, the waves, but in addition to that, we've got the rain. When the rain falls at the top of a pile of sand, and you can play with sugar in your house or whatever you want to do, that tends to wash it down. When it dries out, the wind tends to move it. The top soil is held in place by the growth there and the roots and so forth, and when they're disturbed, then it exposes that area even more. And you can't easily replenish that. You know, there are techniques for dredging sand and piling it up, and some of the area there that's to the west side of the boardwalk is the result of dredging and refilling from many years ago. And it has done quite well, I think primarily because people have not walked up on the grass.
Right.
And as kind of a side note, I recently took a walk over to Sandy Neck Beach, and I noticed that people were not, this was during the height of the summer season, and people were not up walking on the dunes, and then I kind of realized why, because there's a lot of poison ivy there.
Well, there you go.
And so poison ivy tends to make
There's
people...
a solution.
It tends to make people more responsible. You know, they don't want to get that itchy rash, and so they stay off it. And that might be something that needs to be done here.
Yeah.
Sadly, but I think that... But it is at a tipping point, and unless we find some solutions, and I don't see myself as an engineer. I see myself as somebody raising the red flag.
My nickname for you is Paul Revere.
Thank you. Well, it's if we don't get people who know how to solve these involved, the scientists, the engineers, the Corps of Engineers, and others involved, then it's going to be gone, and when it's gone, we're in for massive trouble.
Right, I agree. So what changes have you seen? I know you've documented these changes. I mean, maybe you could talk about the breaches. When I was growing up, there were no breaches. So maybe I think there have been some newly developed breaches.
Well, there are at least 3 and possibly as many as 5 places where the water has overwashed the dunes. And you know, as it overwashes, it takes the sand from the dunes and it pushes it towards Mill Creek. And during the summer, those little outgrowths or croppings, whatever you want to call them, are delightful places to you know, spend an afternoon.
Right.
But what happens is the water, again, the wind, the rain, and the water from Mill Creek tends to wash those away. And so the sand that was the dune becomes this little outcropping, and then it's gone. One example that people might be familiar with is there was a beam that became exposed just to the east of the boardwalk bridge, and or the boardwalk steps. And over about 2 years, more and more of that beam was exposed until finally it washed away. Mm-hmm. Now that beam, I measured at one point, over 20 feet was sticking out from the sand dune. So that's in excess of 20 feet of sand that's washed away.
Yes.
I mean, we've also witnessed several stair removals and replacements.
Right.
Are washed away, not just at the boardwalk area, but also further east towards the canal and hemisphere and where people are living. And so I think the short answer to your question is that a lot of what I've observed in my travels is kind of a perception of the shrinking of the beach, the shrinking of the dunes.
And the flattening. That's the other thing I've noticed. They're much flatter than they used to be. You go up at the top of that boardwalk before you go down the stairs and you look out, and it's flat.
Yes.
That's scary.
It is. You know, there are people who, you know, are familiar with a time when there was enough water here so that it actually washed into downtown Sandwich.
Yes.
And
Yes,
there's a
we're going to
story.
have some people on this show talking about that.
Well, it's something that we as human beings can do something about at certain levels. And the one that I've tried to make people aware of is that you, as a person walking on the dunes, if you walk up there and you trample on those grasses, you are having an effect much deeper than your little footprint, because it's going to allow that little area to begin to erode away.
That's right.
And
one of the other things that I've noticed is the frequency of the flooding of the marsh. So when I was a kid, it was a rare occasion when the water covered the boardwalk. I mean, it was a big event. And now it seems to happen almost with every full moon, every new moon. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that. Do you think that's primarily from the rising of the sea? Does it have anything to do with more water coming in because of the erosion from the beach or the inlet into the creek?
well, a marsh, as you know, is made up of not sand, but sediment.
Right.
And it is the starting point in the food chain. So the little fleas and other critters that are in there, and they're eaten by crabs and small fish and so forth. And that marshland does flood on a regular basis. It has to flood on a regular basis. But I think that it is easily can be described as being more serious now.
It's the extent of the flooding. Of course, we have the flood tides with every moon.
Right.
But basically, what I have seen is that water now is almost flooding the roads. I mean, it really has gotten much more extensive than it ever used to be in the past.
Well, it has flooded across the roads.
Yep.
And so the marsh, that tidal flow is more serious than it used to be. But the other thing that's happening here in the marshes is the marshes themselves are eroding away as that water rushes out.
They are.
And that is not replaceable. That's not something that you can dredge up and just fill in. That's a natural process that is the result of plants that grow and then die, and compost, I guess, is what we would use it if it was in our yard. But basically, that's what it is. And so it's mud and silt, and again, that could have a serious impact on the food chain. And the fishing industry, lobsters and shellfish and so forth, is important to the Cape, but it starts right there in the marsh.
That's right. Now, when I was a child, I remember having mud fights. I mean, we would go in and dig into that, because that's really gooky mud, and it would make a mess. And I still see kids doing that today. I see them in there playing on the marshes. I mean, I think we think about the dunes and how important it is to keep our footprints off the dunes. We need to keep our footprints off the marsh.
Well, the other thing and I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is taking place here, and you kind of allude to that, is that when you were growing up, and when I was growing up, the Cape was a place to come for a vacation. It was, in Patti Page's great song, Winding Roads and so forth. That's what it was. And now, over time, with an increase in the population, it's becoming more of a commercial, perhaps even industrial complex. And when that happens, the things that we grew up with, that we appreciate as children and appreciate as adults, that lifestyle is changing also.
Yes.
And whether we can maintain what we see as critical to our lifestyle and the environment versus the influx of business and year-round residents and so forth, I don't know.
What do you think, going back to this video, was the public's reaction to this video? When did it come out? It's been a little while.
It came out 4 years ago.
Okay.
And
did you get feedback on it? Did
we
people
did.
say this is great, or did people say there's nothing you can do about this? This is nature. We shouldn't be putting money into this. We can't really help this.
I think most people that have responded to me, and I think probably to Randy too, have been supportive of the concept and supportive of the idea that, yes, there is something there of value and we need to do what we can to maintain it. Only once did I get somebody say that I was interfering with his rights to use the beach, and so he didn't accept that. But I think that was one person.
Yeah. The comments that I've heard on the negative side have been, this is a natural process, Irene, and we should not be putting money into it because it's just a money pit. I obviously feel differently. That boardwalk was just named one of the top 10 boardwalks of the U.S. by the National Geographic, and it was named that not because it's got these wonderful concessions along it or, is an amusement area. It's because of the natural beauty, and we're going to lose that. So I wonder how we can change maybe the public's perception that there's nothing we can do, because that sometimes frustrates me. I want to be able to educate people to say there is something that we can do. We can at least slow this down. It may be in the very, very long run, may be inevitable that the Cape won't be here anymore. But at least for now, there are things that we can do to mitigate this, I think, and help to preserve this natural beauty.
Well, I think you're right, and part of it is, hopefully through education, people will realize that I can't perhaps enjoy this 100% the way I used to do as a kid when I slid down the dunes.
Right.
Now I can only enjoy it 75% because I can see it, I can photograph it, I can bring my children there and show them what it's like, but I have to enjoy it in other ways. And so if we can educate people so that they realize that they have a responsibility to protect and secure it for the future, I think that's one thing. Secondly, there are some mechanical things that I understand can be done. One of them is to change the way that Mill Creek currently flows in and out, and that would change the speed and
how much volume came in.
How much volume came in and all those kinds of things, and that would help. And then there's obviously the opportunity to dredge sand and place it on the dunes. And yes, it's kind of an artificial situation, but if we don't do that, then we're not going to have anything. And then I think there's the issue of, is there anything else that can be done to improve the flow of sand from the north to the beach? We know, and I think it's documented, that the breakwater that is there, the westerly or northerly breakwater, does stop the flow of sand. That's why it was put there. But is there some way to
sand bypass something like that? Yeah.
And we've heard that there are such things as sand pumps that operate artificially that would move the sand in such a way that it would not impede the flow of shipping in the canal, but would send it on further to Town Neck Beach.
Yeah, I think this brings up a really good point. So it's really critical that we restore the beach, but once we've restored the beach, we need to maintain it.
Yes.
I have some neighbors who vacation down in Marco Island and have seen some pictures of Marco Island at one time when the water was up to a seawall that was right at the condominium level, like right where the condominiums start. And they were able to, through some help with the Army Corps of Engineers, rebuild their beach. The beach is extensive now, but they maintain it. So they not only restored it, but every so many years, they are shooting sand on the beach. Certainly Florida makes a lot more money on their beaches than Sandwich does, but I think that that's something that we're going to have to consider in this long-range plan. It's not just a matter of getting more sand on the beach, but somehow maintaining it.
That's right. I fully agree.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you think that we can do, perhaps our group, the Trustees of Sandwich Beaches, to sort of help the town in this crusade against losing our beaches?
Well, I think we have to be supportive of any activity that the town wants to do to try to improve the beaches. And I think that this series that you're doing here, that we're doing here, will hopefully help inform people about this. The Chamber of Commerce and the merchants in town, especially those who are along 6A and in that area, recognize how seriously this could impact their situation and have been supportive and our further outreach in terms of brochures and posters and that sort of thing, I think will help to educate the public. And I think it's almost more important to educate the year-rounders here than it is the people who come here for a week or a weekend in the summer, because we have an impact full time, and it's our beach.
Right.
More than it is theirs. It's
That's right.
theirs to visit, but ours to own and use.
And I think that there's maybe a perception by the people who live down in South Sandwich or live in Forestdale that this really isn't their problem. But I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, I think that it really is a bigger problem than just the people along the beach or just the businesses that are downtown. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree with that.
Because it's going to impact all of us if we end up having destruction of some of those businesses and loss of some of our town. It's going to affect our whole town.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done, almost single-handedly, in bringing the awareness of this problem, documenting it. And I want to thank you for your continued work in helping us to save our beaches. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's been, it's our problem here. It's not any individual's problem. And so anything that we can do to further the protection is going to be something that will help all of us.
Great. Thanks.